Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely and totally misunderstood? Well, we're going to dive into exactly why that happens. And the answer, it turns out, isn't really in the words we say, but in the hidden worlds that exist inside each and every one of us.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You have a conversation, you think it went fine, and then you walk away realizing you were basically speaking a different language. It's that super frustrating, kind of invisible gap between what you meant and what they actually heard. And this image, it just captures that chaos perfectly, doesn't it? The key to untangling this whole mess isn't about learning some clever speaking tricks or new buzzwords. It's about launching an investigation inward. It's about understanding the source code that runs our entire communication system.
So our first stop is what I like to call the mirror, because before we can ever hope to connect clearly with other people, we have to get a really clear picture of ourselves. This is all about understanding your own identity.
So what even is identity? Well, at its core, it's basically the sum total of all the answers you could give to that huge question, who am I? I mean, take a second. Think of all the labels, the roles, the beliefs that make you, well, you.
And here's what's so fascinating, right? None of us has just one identity. You have tons of them. The you that talks to your boss is probably very different from the you that talks to your kids. And these identities aren't set in stone. They're dynamic, they're constantly being shaped and reshaped with every single interaction we have.
Okay, so if we dig a little deeper past identity, we find our self-concept. If identity is the list of roles we play, then self-concept is the story we tell ourselves about how well we play them. It's your own private, internal movie about what you think you're good at, what you're not so good at, and what you're capable of.
And the psychologist Carl Rogers, he gave us this fantastic model for this. He said your self-concept is basically made of three key parts. First, there's your self-image. That's how you see yourself right now. Then, you've got your self-esteem. That's how much you value that image. And third, your ideal self. That's the person you wish you could be. And that gap, between who you are now and who you want to be, that's where so much of our motivation, and sometimes our frustration, comes from.
So here's the really crucial part. Building a strong, accurate self-concept is pretty much impossible without self-awareness. It's the skill of honestly looking at all those different parts of yourself and really understanding what's driving your behavior.
So, how do we actually build that awareness? Well, there's this really cool tool called the Johari window. It's a simple framework developed by two psychologists, Joseph and Harry, which is where the name Johari comes from, and it helps us map out our own self-awareness. Let's break it down.
Imagine a window with 4 panes. The open self is public knowledge, the stuff you and others both know about you. The hidden self is your private world, what you know, but you choose not to share. The unknown self is the really mysterious part, that untapped potential that's hidden from everyone, including you. But listen, the most important one for avoiding misunderstanding is the blind self. These are your blind spots, the things other people see in you that you are completely unaware of. This is where so much conflict gets its start. So the whole goal of self-awareness is to shrink that blind spot, usually by being open to feedback.
Okay, so we've looked in the mirror at our identity. Now let's talk about the lens that our identity uses to look out at the world. Let's get into our perception.
Now, this is a huge point. Perception is not passive. We don't just see the world, we are actively building our own version of it. Our brain is constantly selecting what to pay attention to, organizing that information, and then interpreting it to create our own personal reality.
Think of it like this. Out of millions of bits of information coming at you every second, your brain selects what seems important. It organizes it into a pattern it recognizes, and then here's the key. It interprets what that pattern means based on your past, your self-concept, your identity. Do you see a glass as half full or half empty? That right there is interpretation at work.
There's an old Indian folktale that illustrates this idea just brilliantly. It's about 6 blind men who encounter an elephant for the very first time. And it's the perfect metaphor for how our limited, individual perceptions can create huge misunderstandings.
So each man touches a totally different part of the animal. The one holding the leg is absolutely convinced an elephant is a pillar. The one holding the tail declares it's a rope. The one at the trunk is sure it's a snake. The one touching the tusk insists it's a spear. Now, they're all experiencing a real piece of the truth, right? But because none of them has the whole picture, they start to argue.
And then, a wise king comes along and offers this crucial insight. He doesn't say any of them are wrong. He says they are all right, but their perception is incomplete. And man, isn't that the heart of so many of our disagreements? We argue as if our small piece of the elephant is the entire elephant.
So because our perception is a filtered reality, it's naturally going to have some bugs. It's prone to biases. These are just mental shortcuts our brain takes that can seriously warp our judgment, often without us even realizing it's happening.
A classic example is the self-serving bias, and this cartoon just nails it. When she gets an A+, she thinks, "I'm so smart." That's her taking internal credit. But when she gets an F, the teacher doesn't like me. Now she's blaming an external force. We all do this. It's a way to protect our self-esteem.
Okay, so we've looked in the mirror at our identity, and we've looked through the lens of our perception. Now, let's talk about building the bridge to actually connect with another person.
This right here is the classic roadmap of communication. And it looks pretty simple, doesn't it? But each one of these steps is a potential failure point where our unique identities and perceptions can cause a total breakdown.
Let's walk through it, because this is where everything we've talked about comes together. So a sender has an idea. They have to encode it, put it into words. But that encoding process is filtered through their self-concept, right? Their story about who they are. The message then travels to a receiver, who has to decode it. And that decoding process is filtered through their lens, their unique perception of the world. Misunderstanding is what happens when the sender's self-concept filter and the receiver's perception lens just don't match up.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've looked at our identity, our perception, and the communication process itself. So what's the one crucial takeaway from all this?
It's this. We spend so much time worrying about the right words to say, but that's the end of the process, not the beginning. True, effective communication starts long before any words are ever spoken. It begins with the self-awareness you get from looking in the mirror and the empathy you need to try and understand someone else's lens.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. If every single conversation you have with the world is really just a reflection of the conversation you're having with yourself, what's one thing you could change about that inner conversation, starting today, that could completely change how the world talks back to you?